Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sustainability in the Sea. I'm your host, Carissa. Happy World Ocean Month. It is June, baby. It's also Pride Month. World Ocean Day was actually June 8th, but I watched over the last couple years Earth Day become like Earth Week and then become Earth Month. So I'm just going to cut the crap and go straight to World Ocean Month because the ocean needs an entire month. We need an entire month-long platform to talk about the ocean. At FutureSwell, we had videos go out the entire week, and they'll be going out the entire month. I have a lot of stuff that we're sharing too, but this podcast episode is one I'm really excited and one I've actually held for this month because I interview my friend, McKenzie Margaret. She's an amazing marine biologist, amazing advocate for sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, and she's a content creator, a science communicator. She is really an amazing ocean scientist and ocean voice, and I've been wanting to have her on this podcast forever. So we really just have fun in this episode because we love each other, and I wanted to share it with you guys. If you don't know her stuff, she creates under the handle McKenzie, like SEA, and she also is one of the few voices that is really amplifying the important topic, at least on social media, of sustainable seafood. Another one is Seaside Emily D'Souza. They're like the best. So follow her content, listen to this episode, and really just like prepare to be entertained because there's nothing like two marine scientists shooting the shit. I have no updates for you guys. I'll do an entire debrief on World Oceans Month after the month is over, but in the meantime, just enjoy. I love you. And I guess my one update is we are going hard on YouTube. So if you're a YouTube viewer, check out FutureSwell and Carissa and Climate. And we can't wait to connect with you all over there and grow the community large and wide. All right. I hope you guys are having a beautiful World Ocean Month. I hope that you got in the water. I hope you got in the waterway. I hope you spent time in nature if that stuff isn't accessible to you. And I hope that maybe, just maybe, you learned something new about the ocean. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Sustainability and the Sea. Hi, McKenzie. Welcome to Sustainability in the Sea.
Hi.
Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me today.
For those listening, McKenzie is back in grad school. So just like a moment of silence and congratulations for that. Like
A moment of silence for like every other aspect of my life, though.
there's got to be a pause. Grad school really sucks out everything you have to give the world. It takes it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So
sure.
how long is your program?
This is only a year, so it's like a graduate diploma. It's only a year program, but I'm currently in the process of applying for more because,
Oh,
you know,
you're not done after a year. You're like,
no. I was like, I think I like being tortured, actually.
oh, you're such an academic. You're okay, wait. So it's a graduate diploma in aquaculture and fisheries is your focal area,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I've always known you wanted to do that.
Yeah, I've always loved the ocean, obviously, like step one. Like I've always been a water baby, an ocean person. And I grew up, you kind of get told, I'm sure we've all heard it, we've heard it a million times. If you love the ocean, people are very like accent like I like very opposite of the fisheries, right? It's always been like very at odds with conservation. Like I
Yeah.
went to two conferences last year and both of them were very like anti-fisheries and like had people on stage saying things about fisheries and I was like, oh man. And so I grew up with that. But then came a point in my life where I was like, okay, wait a second. I love the ocean very, very deeply. My one true love, first love is be the sea, right? But also I have to recognize and I can see with my two eyeballs that fisheries and aquaculture and seafood are needed. That's how we feed people, that's how we employ people. Our economy is like based on like it is part of who we are as humanity.
It's
Okay, so
like
we need this thing.
it's like the biggest industry in the ocean
Yeah,
space. Like, how can we just
yeah,
be like that? We're just
yeah.
gonna ignore that. We're just
We're just
gonna
gonna
not
ignore
work
it.
on solutions
Exactly.
there. We have to.
Exactly. So it was kind of like the reckoning, I think it was in my undergrad when I was like all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait a second, this is something that we need. I want ocean conservation. Same. I want to save the whales like all the little girls. I want to save the
Mhm.
whales and save the dolphins, get the turtles
Yep,
out there. But that has to live in the same sphere as fishing and aquaculture and sustainability. How do
exactly.
we do that? So that became my passion, and that became something that I just started kind of diving into. Like I'll always be the person that loves all the organisms, but I also recognize that fisheries has to have its place in there. So that's kind of where that passion has really ignited.
Were you always a water baby? Did you grow up
Always.
in the ocean? And what were your ocean beginnings?
I always my fun fact is always that I learned to swim before I learned to walk. I've always
So
been
epic. Such a flex. That is a
such a
huge flex.
flex. I have the little like report card from my swimming school from the year that I was born. That was like, she's such a water girl. Keep it up. I'm like,
Keep it
thank
up.
you. Um, and then I grew up in Hawaii, where you are now. My whole life was spent literally in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I was born in Canada, grew up in Hawaii, and so I also feel like a very deep connection to humpback whales that make that migration from
You are a
Canada
humpback
to
whale.
Hawaii. Yes, that's why I made that migration multiple times in my life as well, literally from BC to Hawaii, back and forth, back and forth. So I feel very connected to that. And I've always been a water person. I've always wanted to get into marine science. In my high school years, I felt very torn between marine science and other sciences because the environmental sector is so underpaid and can be really competitive and really tough. And I was told that by
So you
everyone,
knew.
anybody. Oh yeah, anybody you ask is gonna be like,
Think about that one
yeah,
once
like
or
do you
twice.
yeah, like I know you love the ocean, but like, do you want to also like be paid? And you're like, well, yeah.
Oh God.
So it did take me for a loop. And when I first went into my undergrad, I went with the intentions of doing something else. I kind of went with the intentions of doing more of a hard science and then like keeping the ocean as my outlet, keeping the ocean as my space to be myself. That was kind of the thought was like, do my job, have the ocean as my hobby, as my love. But it became pretty clear, like after about a year, it came clear to like everybody around me, basically. Everybody around me was like you want to do marine science. Like you don't seem happy in this. Like you're doing good, like you're a good scientist, but we all can see where your passion is. You can see where your passion is. Like, why are you doing this? So they set me up with a internship at the Hawaii Institute for Marine Biology and Dr. Ruth Gate's lab.
She's an
But
icon. Everyone
an
loves her.
icon, an
She's a, can we just do a
icon.
little like sidebar?
Yeah,
Please tell
absolutely.
us about Dr. Ruth Gates.
I I think that the best thing is when you read any article about her, the first thing people are going to say is that she was always smiling, and that is like the most true statement I've ever heard in my entire life. Like they're her only, like she was one of the most happy, like just kind, warm people. Like being in her presence was so lovely every single time. She definitely just is one of those people that like the earth is missing. I always think about there's this comic I have, Chicken Noodle Soup for the Ocean Lover's Soul, the book.
Yeah.
I have that one. It's like one of my favorite books. I've had it since I was like in middle school. It
Never
is
even heard of
like
this book. I'm gonna buy it right now.
it is it has like my favorite poem in it. It has some great short stories. Chicken Noodle Soup for the Ocean Lover's Soul. It is one of my favorites. I have had it forever. But in there is a comic of like Jacques Cousteau when he passed away and him leaving the earth and like the earth being sad. And I think about that for Ruth Gates is when she passed away, the earth must have been sad because she was just one of those people. I always think about her resilience when I think about ocean conservation because her love was coral, right? Like she loved coral, and coral is this thing that's facing some of the biggest consequences of what we're doing. And never did that deter her, never did that like she always just was so resilient about it and so powerful about it. So I think about that when I think about ocean conservation a lot. I'm like, I get so frustrated so easily, particularly in like the fishery space, and I'm like, wait, what would Dr. Ruth Gates do?
She also, her, what I remember is her position was vacant for like 3 to 4 years because she was irreplaceable.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely irreplaceable.
and
There's
I think about how the community here was like, what are we gonna do? And that's just such a mark to leave,
Yeah. I like oftentimes think that I owe my like career in marine science to Dr. Ruth Gates because I did one little internship in her lab. I know that we had connections because she was also a lesbian. I am a good old gay, and so there was a bit of
You and Ruth,
communal love.
immediate.
Oh yeah, immediate. It was like it was like okay, got you. And she always called me the girl that was dancing in her lab because I always put my headphones in and I'd be like dancing because I'd be like labeling test tubes. I'd be like labeling like thousands of test tubes for her lab. So of course I was just dancing, and she'd be like, "Yeah, the one that dances in my lab." But I did one little internship in her lab, and she was at a meeting with a bunch of other scientists, and we were talking, and kind of how it came to be was so the Hawaii Institute for Marine Biology is part of the part of the University of Hawaii. I went to a really small private university. It's called
Went to
Chaminade.
Chaminade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to Chaminade. And so they're not the same school. So Ruth had never had a Chaminade student in her lab, but because her and my dean were besties, they were friends. Dr. Helen Turner and her were good friends. So Dr. Helen Turner like nagged her and convinced her to like take a student. She was like, take one student, like one of my students, and then like we'll see, right? Like if you like it, we'll see. We can like see what else we can get in. And I was the one student sent to that. I wasn't told this information until afterwards, which I think was a good
You're like,
thing.
I'm not even majoring in marine science yet.
Yeah,
You're like,
I'm not even a marine scientist. I was like, I'm not even like didn't even think about marine science at that point. Right? I'm like got there and they were like, do you know what ocean acidification is? And I was like, no.
oh my
No,
gosh.
no, I don't. Um, but I was the person that they sent. And but afterwards, she got up and she was like, "Yeah, I let them have a trial person, and it was extremely successful. I was really impressed with McKenzie. Da da da." Like stood up at this meeting and talked about me. And then I had opportunities after that. Like doors opened up in the marine sector that like led to where I am today. Like I owe my little ocean science to Ruth Gates. So,
Honestly, as we get older, we have to remember to do this for so many young
oh
people.
yeah.
It's like you're like, she just mentioned me,
Mhm.
and now my career is unfolding in with
Mhm.
less resistance
Yeah.
because a woman advocated for me.
Yeah.
Like,
I think about it all the time. I advocate for the other women in fisheries and aqua all the time. When I interviewed for the program, you had to interview with the dean, and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing at your school to like rectify the divide in like between like the gender gap in fisheries and aquaculture? It is a very male-dominated field, and that has real life consequences. Like, what are you actively doing?" And he was like, "We're working on it. Like we have more women staff, and your cohort is actually about 50-50." And I was like, that's actually pretty cool. And
that
there
is
is like
cool.
there's a pretty good like it's like you can tell like a lot of the older staff are mostly men.
Mhm.
But like a lot of the people in my research building, there are like a lot of them are women. There's a lot of women in my class. Like there are people that are we're trying to get in there. And anytime someone's like has like sparks research interest, they're like, yeah, I think I'd be interested in research. I'm like, okay,
Let's do it.
you're going.
Yeah,
Got it.
got it. No,
Yeah.
I always think about you and my friend Gabby, who I think you guys have been on panels together. You're
Mhm.
my fisheries girlies. And I just think about like how you must be in meetings that are just like you look around, you could be the only person that identifies as a woman, and you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, or like I need to make this easier going
Mhm.
forward for younger generations. So okay, so
Absolutely.
you're at Chaminade and you have an internship and Ruth Gates changed your life.
Yes.
And then
And
you
Ruth Gate's
major
changed
in
your life.
marine as she does. And you major in marine science. And were there fisheries opportunities?
No, so I still got my degree is still in forensics. I have it sitting right here.
Wait, was is that's probably helpful. There.
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's of science in forensics and a minor in chemistry.
Oh wow.
She's a little chemist. Um, and then after I graduated, I actually started grad school at UH originally, and I was with Dr. Ruth Gates' lab again.
Oh
So I
wow.
had worked, did some stuff with the collector urchin, the Hawaiian collector urchin, Nepsis scutilla. I did some stuff with that after Ruth Gate's lab, and then went to UH, started grad school, was in her lab again, was doing some research, and then funny enough, where you and I have crossed paths, but we didn't even know it at the time, was at this time in my life where a certain president was put into office.
Yeah.
We lost pretty much all environmental funding. It just like
Yep.
vanished overnight. It was gone.
My grad
And
thesis was dissolved overnight.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you have a picture of me with my sign. It said girls only want to have funding for their research. Um,
It was a
uh,
protest. We were at a
it was a
protest.
protest, yep. So this was this time, and basically, my profile at UH got reevaluated, and even though I had been an in-state tuition person the whole time, I had paid in-state tuition for Chaminade. I went to high school in Hawaii. I went to middle school. I went to elementary school in Hawaii. Even though all of my transcripts came from Hawaii, UH reevaluated when after we lost funding, and I was now an international student. So my tuition like tripled overnight.
Wait, but you were living on Oahu?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
God.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it was an absolute mess. So I tried to work. I tried to continue working. I tried to work as a naturalist. That's how I became a naturalist. I started working, researching, and going to school all at the same time. You can probably guess that didn't
Didn't work.
last very long. No. Everyone's like, how'd that go? It didn't.
Did. How long? A few
Um,
months?
yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't last very long. So then I ended up dropping out of my grad program. I worked as a naturalist for quite a few years. Um, and that also just kind of sparked my interest. But I've always been interested in fisheries. Like I grew up fishing. I grew up in the islands. I grew up, learning how to do all this stuff. I've dated fishermen. I've been there. I've fished for taco. I've done it all. So it was more of my fisheries background has definitely been more practical and been more um, based on the people around me and based on the community that I've been a part of, which I think is really valuable, but particularly going into a space that is more fisheries science, because there can be a very big divide between those two communities,
Yes.
which they need to communicate better. Yeah.
Alex's position is like the
Oh
one
yeah,
person doing that
exactly. Alex is the one person doing it all.
in all of
Um,
Hawaii.
yeah, in all of Hawaii, all the islands. That poor guy. Yeah, so it's, so I started grad school. My original grad research was more coral based. Obviously, I was in Ruth Gate's lab. It was more coral based. It was had much more like biochemistry because I had a minor in chemistry.
Chemistry
So
is your Zoom background right now. So
yeah, exactly.
it's still part of your identity. You're chemist.
It's my little chemist, my little
I
amino acids.
I wanted to ask you about the naturalist because I feel like that position is such a common entry level opportunity for folks, and you get to talk to people, you get to practice your public speaking.
No.
Would you recommend that experience, and could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I loved being a naturalist. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I think it's one of the more fun jobs. It is like the downside, particularly in Hawaii, is of course it's not a very great paying job, and
Mhm.
Hawaii is expensive. And even as somebody with a degree at that point in my time, like I had experience in the marine field, I'd grown up in Hawaii, I knew all the information, I was a good naturalist. I still wasn't making very much money. I still had to have a second job.
Yeah.
So, that's how I got into communications. That's how I got into social media, is because I was like, this is not enough. So yes and no. I like now, so a naturalist in Canada, like there are more positions, but it's definitely more competitive, which is kind of
Oh,
interesting. Like it is a really like sought after like career, which I think is so interesting because in Hawaii it's very much like we'll train you.
yeah. Like,
Come and
please.
yeah, please come and we'll give our tours, we'll train you. Whereas Canada, it's very like sought after. There's classes to do it, which is so fun. I really want to do one of the classes for it here because I think it's interesting and not particularly my like forte. I'm still learning about this ocean a little bit more, right?
Mhm.
But I loved it. I loved being a naturalist. I loved working on the submarine. I thought it was so fun. Again, definitely a job you're working a lot and not getting paid enough. So that does start to affect you at the end of the day. But I mean, what else can you ask for? You're seeing beautiful things every single day. You're
Okay.
seeing whales. You're,
Yeah, I
you
was
know,
also a naturalist, and I feel like it helped me with my public speaking, or
yeah.
not public speaking skills, but just being like, I'm talking to someone totally different than I was just talking to, and how am I going to take the same information and package it differently, which
Yeah.
I'm sure laid the platform for your social media
Oh,
start.
absolutely.
Yes.
I think that I got into social media because I saw, like, I definitely very naively didn't realize how disconnected people are from the ocean. Like when you think about it, I think it's like 10% of people in the world see the ocean or something. Like like between like less than 20% of people ever see an ocean. Like most of our population lives inland. Like, but our planet is 70% ocean. Our planet is an ocean planet, but we don't see this thing that is who we are and is where we're from. And so I grew up in a place that I woke up seeing the ocean. I've seen
Yeah.
the ocean every day. I didn't quite realize that people didn't have this connection to the ocean. And so when I became a naturalist and I was the person that was telling them about the ocean for the first time, I was seeing people be like, "Oh, whale." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like it's just breathing, but cool if you're having a great time. This is
Like I've
great."
been seeing the humpback migration since I was born.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to see it in other people's
Oh, yeah,
eyes.
absolutely.
And sometimes I find myself starting conversations like at like level 5, and it's like just hone it back. Like the
Yeah.
ocean's important. Like
Yeah.
let's start there.
Yeah,
Like the
exactly.
ocean matters. Like
The ocean matters. Yeah.
yeah.
That's kind of where it came from. Is I was like, okay, I'm at level 5 almost always. I'm like, we gotta do all of this stuff. The ocean is, protected at all costs. Here we go. But I'm like, people are like still like, ocean? Where? Who? What's the
Megalodon
ocean?
is like people.
Yes.
I'm like, how do I figure out how to use like the megalodon hysteria to like mobilize people? Like
Yes.
that's what people think of when they think of
Yeah.
ocean.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
okay,
that's
so you were talking mainly visitors.
Yeah, I talked to mostly tourists, but like, we'd get most of the people that came on were my friends. Most of the local people were my friends.
Coming to make fun
Like,
of you.
yeah, exactly. They're just there to make fun of me. Um, but I saw people connecting to the ocean and I saw that potential. I was like, okay, if I get people to know the ocean, I can get people to care about the ocean, then I can get people to take action for the ocean. That was like the way that my brain kind of worked and how I got so into science communication and how I got into social media was I was just like, I could take this and make it a feeling that people feel like from their bed, like from their when they're taking a poop, when they're on their phone. Like I can get in there,
You
you
can get
know?
it there. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like we formally met because we both got the grant from Gillette Venus to
Yes.
do, which was so I thought that was such a cool
It
flagship
was a really cool
program.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I thought that was a really unique way to do some like outreach and some like good for the world, you know?
Yeah. And kind
It
of just
didn't
like we trust you to do it however you want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
And
like was something that didn't feel as fake as so many like environmental campaigns feel. It felt really like, nope, we're really gonna give you money to like do something good for the world. And you were like, oh, okay, you
yeah.
really are.
And it was during COVID. So I ran some virtual workshops, but you stood up a scholarship, hey?
I made a scholarship and I held a virtual panel.
Nice.
And it was featuring 3 queer women in STEM. And the thing that like I continually say is like like obviously Venus Gillette wanted it to be very ocean themed, and I tried my best to make it as ocean themed as possible. But like finding queer women in STEM is one thing. Finding trans women in STEM is nearly impossible. Finding like a trans woman that does marine science that would be willing to go on a thing on a panel was next to impossible. And I've talked to this about with other people, other queer folks in STEM, and they're like, yeah, it's impossible. It's there's not a lot of visibility and a lot of, people are willing to go out there because it's putting yourself out there. And so it was a really challenging thing to do, but it was extremely rewarding. Because we had these queer women come in and talk about their like experiences in STEM and talk about the challenges that they faced. And then we gave money to queer women to pursue STEM careers, and it was a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my highlights of
Yeah,
like just knowing like you were trusted, like go find the people, do it however's best for your community.
yeah.
How did you get on TikTok in the first place?
The gays.
They're like, you're missing out on that app. You got to get
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah, it really was. It was the lesbians that were like, hey, like this is where everyone's having fun. And I was like,
So
okay.
fun at the beginning. It
Yeah, it
was
was so fun.
like a party.
Yeah, it was just fun. And it was definitely like a lot of my early content is so just like silly and fun and like very queer coded and very queer themed. And then I remember sitting like during peak COVID and I have like these little coral like diagram pieces. And I was sitting there and I was like, let me teach you about coral. And I like just started kind of talking about ocean science on TikTok and people started listening. And I was like, oh, okay.
And then I'm like, oh wow, this is clearly now a key part of our careers.
Yeah. Now I've built a whole career around it.
It's such an important pillar of science communication, though. I feel like even though TikTok has grown in many different ways and is going to continue to do that, it's like there are still not that many people talking about the ocean. Like there's still so much more opportunity for us to reach people
Yeah.
with ocean content through
Yeah.
social media. And I
Yeah.
I feel like we've always been on the same page about the importance of it. Did you ever deal with people at the beginning that were like, what are you doing? What I like, is this even like worth your time, and like not really getting it? And how'd you deal with that?
I feel like the only people that I've really gotten that back from are like my family or the people around me that like didn't quite understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've always just like been a scientist and always been like an academic and then like worked as a naturalist and like did all these very like tangible ocean things that they could see, right? They could see me actively being involved, actively going on a boat, actively doing this stuff. My dad has come on my submarine before, like things like that, that you can feel it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was like me and my little phone, like, you know, me and diagrams, me and like and I think that like that it took them quite a bit of time to like realize, oh no, like she has an impact. Even when I was like going to Harvard last year,
I
my family was
know. I'm
like,
like, you
what?
guys, this is kind of important. This
Yeah.
is really like a there's a reason people are taking us to Harvard.
Yes. Yes. I was like really like I promise I'm not just like making all of this up. Like that this is important. What I'm doing is important. It takes a lot of work. I promise. It's not just like beep boop boop on my phone and all of a sudden things are happening. And like I think there's like a disconnect and I it took a minute, but it's happened and they respect a lot better now, thankfully.
They get it now.
Yeah.
Um, we have a lot of people who listen to Sustainability in the Sea who are usually at the beginning of their academia journey, or they're
Mm.
in college, sometimes in high school. Would you say that science communication using content creation is something you'd recommend for them to consider as a pathway, or any like words of wisdom about making it part of your job?
I I feel like science communication is something that anybody can do, but you don't have to do it like you don't have to do it the way I do it. You don't have to do it the way Carissa does it. Like science communication goes so like you can write articles, you can make art, you can make art that's like that has a meaning that you pertain it to. It can be very like there's just so many different ways that you can communicate science. Like I know that sounds so silly and sounds so simple, but like I went to when I was in Boston, they have at the Harvard Natural Science Museum, they have an entire section that is glass flowers, right? That's like what they're known for. It's like all of these flowers that have been blown out of glass. But it's when you look at it, it's extremely scientific. They have like taken cross sections of like the gonads of plants and made that into glass so that you can see it as a person. So somebody can go and look at it and see this plant that you would never normally see because it's from the other side of the freaking world. And
Oh.
you can now see the cross section of its gonad forever because it's made of glass. Like that is still science communication. like,
Mhm.
I think that like what I do can be really overwhelming for people. People are like, it takes a lot of confidence. Yeah, it does. You have to get on in front of a camera. Like it takes a lot of confidence to do what you do. You amaze me. You're like you're having mask on, hair wild, and still looking great, and you're like there going. I like get such bad anxiety.
No, I'm like,
Like,
sometimes I think I disassociate from how many people actually follow me. That's what's going on. As I'm like, this is what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna put on makeup. We're here, we're in Hawaii. Like, we don't need to be, yeah.
that's fair.
I'm like, but I appreciate you saying that because I definitely disassociate when I click post. But
That's fair.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it, but you're right. Actually, content creation is super overwhelming to people. They're like, video
Yeah.
editing, what do I say?
Yeah.
How do you make it catchy? Oh, it got 4 views. And you're like, I know.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like it can be really overwhelming and it's not necessarily for everyone, and that's okay. But I'm sure there is an aspect of science communication that would be pertinent to you. Like, do you really like to art? Do you really like to draw? Do you like to sing? Do you like to do any of these things? You can really meld into some form of science communication, which is useful because everybody absorbs things in different ways. Not everyone's going to sit there and listen to Chris and I talk on a TikTok. Not everyone's going to do that.
There should be other options for them, guys.
Exactly. Like there should people like to read. Are you a great writer? Like science communication as far as like writing and articles and journalism is so necessary and so cultivated. And it's a really important skill to learn. So like yes, I do think science communication is a career that people should consider, but like consider how you want to communicate.
Yeah, and really think about it too. Like I'm trying to figure out like what my exact like line is going forward. Um, okay, so you were, I would say like content creation was a huge defining part of your career, but you
Mm.
always knew you wanted to go back to grad school, right? Did you always know, or
Yeah.
was there kind of
Yeah.
like an aha moment? You're like, it's fisheries for me.
No, I don't know if there was necessarily an aha moment. I knew as soon as I was leaving, I knew that I was gonna go back. I like knew on my way out. I was like, even though it had been so challenging, even though academia literally kicked me out the door, even though academia is an absolute just the worst sometimes. Like I
Cluster.
know, oh yeah, I recognize the issues that people have with it full-heartedly. Like it is a tough atmosphere to be in. Even though all of that, as I was leaving, I was like, I'm going back.
How did you find your program?
So we had left Hawaii originally. My partner and I left Hawaii kind of with the intention of me going back to school. That was kind of the whole goal of leaving was it's easier to afford rent and things on the mainland and, like things are a little bit more uh I don't know. I don't know what the correct word is here because it's not necessarily easier either on the mainland necessarily because you still have to be by the coast to be a marine scientist often, and that
You're not being
often
like
leads.
priced to oblivion with your $8 milk. That one,
Exactly. That's kind of the thing
yeah.
is like the cost of living is like slightly less,
Slightly less.
like marginally less, but like enough that I can afford tuition, you know? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so that was kind of the thing when we left was, okay, we're going to find school. And we kind of drove around all the west coast of the United States and into Canada, kind of looking at schools, looking at what we wanted to do, looking at programs, thinking about things. And then there was a pandemic.
So,
And that kind of like hit us out of the blue. We didn't have like pandemic on our itinerary.
we didn't.
And so instead I kind of like stepped more into the science communication thing, got more into, kind of ex exploring what I wanted to do as well and exploring the different realms of marine science and what kind of interested me. And the two things have always stuck out, like they always do, which is like cetacean conservation kind of ecosystems, ecology, and like how that pertains to seafood and how we can have these two things, how we can have ocean conservation, how we can preserve and keep our oceans for generations to come, and how we can also feed our planet. And those have always been two things that are like really important to me. And so once once the pandemic had subsided and things had kind of started to clear for us and it was time to go back to school, I kind of started looking and I had a couple of opportunities. Like I could have gone across the country to the east side of Canada. And it just kind of all felt a lot. And then I remembered when I was doing my undergrad, somebody had said, you should do a post-bac, which is what we call it in the States, like a post-bac, a post-bachelor's. It's like a 1 year and it can maybe give you a better idea of what you want to do. Because the grad program that I was doing, I was just kind of was doing it because it was a slot that needed to be filled. It was with Ruth Gate's and it was there. And I was like, yep, doing it. And somebody had said, you should do a post-bac. And so I was like, I wonder if Canada has that. And I started like Googling post-bacs in Canada, and it's a post degree in Canada. It's a little different. They call it a post degree here. Same difference. It's like a graduate diploma, and sure enough, there was one on Vancouver Island that was a fisheries and aquaculture program. And I was like, that, like a year to get myself kickstarted, a year to get bridge that gap, to kind of get myself back into like the lab experience. I haven't held a pipette in how many years at this freaking point. Get myself kind of oiled back up. And it pertains to like what I'm kind of interested in. I talked to people that had gone there, and everybody, like, the point of the program is to bridge you to where you want to go. If you want to like work in fisheries management, if you want to get into research, if you want to get into grad school, like they work with everybody and they make your schedule very personal to who you are and your goals. And I was like, okay, this is pretty much exactly what I want to do. And so I applied, and here we are.
And so now you were like, I'm going in with the intention to apply to a graduate program.
Yes. I went in with the intention to continue research. Like that's like the main goal is I want to continue research. I want to continue learning and growing and contributing to more sustain. Sorry, my dog is barging in on us.
That's okay.
Um,
Invite them to the party.
um,
Riley.
I know. So
Intention
sorry, I
was to go
lost.
back to school.
Oh yeah, so sorry, what?
We were saying that the intention was always to go back to graduate school.
Oh, I mean, yes, it was always to go back to graduate school. And so it was always to kind of do research. I want to make sure I am continuing to contribute to the better understanding of our oceans and continue to contribute to research and like also finding my way.
Mhm.
It wasn't necessarily grad school, but it was the intention of continuing research, and grad school is kind of just like the natural progression of that. And so I'm like in the midst of grad school apps right now as we speak.
Do you have any advice for people who might be in the midst of grad school apps too? You're like
Good luck.
solidarity.
It is rough. Yeah, solidarity, moment of silence for your life. Like back to like do a full circle now. Everyone
I
gets a moment of
remember
silence.
being like, wow, I don't have the money to apply for all the schools I want to apply for.
Yeah,
And I have
it
to.
is rough. And like all of my transcripts, this is such bullshit to me. How was I an international student in the States where I grew up? How was I all of a sudden an international student paying three times the rent or three times the tuition? And now I'm in Canada where I was born, and I still have to pay fees of an international student. Like I still have to pay because my
It's
transcripts are coming
international.
internationally.
Yep.
So all of Canadian applications are like, oh, like $80 for Canadians, but if your transcript's international, 200.
You're like, I can never get a break. I'm just a humpback whale
Yeah,
traveling between Canada and Hawaii.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, are you looking at like 2-year programs? Are you looking at
Yes.
PhDs? What are you doing? Okay, no, master's.
So I'm doing a 2-year program for right now. I have goals to do a PhD. I would like to do it. I have a couple of like wild places that I would love to do a PhD at.
Wait,
However,
you're
huh?
going master's, then onward. That's the
Yeah.
goal. I am
Yeah.
so impressed by you right now. I am so you're gonna change everything.
I hope so. That's the goal. That's the what I want.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
hope. That's the dream.
Okay, you
Yeah,
said a few wild places. What are those wild places, or you do you not want to speak them into the
I'm like nervous. People are gonna be like, girl. I would love to go to the Scripps Institute. Scripps is like, let's be real, who wouldn't? Stanford's always always looking at Stanford because they're doing a lot of stuff that I would like to do. And then some like international, probably possibly like UK,
Mhm.
like in that region, University of Sterling, you know. If anybody's listening that likes cetacean conservation and seafood science, you can always DM me.
Hook me up with a potential advisor.
Yeah, exactly. If you have an advisor in mind, let me know. But
Okay,
yeah,
I need to hook you up with my friend Gabby. She did ASU, but then she connected with Conservation International for her
okay.
project, and then she
Yeah.
was doing it in Guyana,
Oh
and
yeah.
then COVID hit, and it all got clusterfucked.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
we'll have
yeah,
to cut
the
that
COVID
out.
really took everything out of everybody. Yeah, I that's the goal, that's the dream. And I thought about going right to a PhD program after this. But most likely I would have to do that internationally. Like I'd have to go to the UK or have to go to the States in order to do that. And because I just signed with the same talent agency that Carissa did,
Woo!
we're now
Same
talent,
agency buddies.
same agency buddies. I feel like I'm also making big career steps recently, and I have career goals that I want to do. Like I have science communication career things that I want to see happening. Like last year was a really big year for me. Like I like how am I gonna top that?
Yeah.
So I want to give that time to flourish as well. And I just don't think I don't think that's me like picking up and like moving to the UK then to do some research. I think that's like letting myself have these 2 years to be in Canada, to let my career flourish, to get a master's and see what happens from there.
Well, and if you know, I always think about Dr. Ayana Elizabeth. If you know what your path is for, if you know your PhD is on the horizon no matter what, then this science communication stuff is going to be so important
Yeah,
through, they're all going to merge eventually. And so
yeah,
don't neglect one pillar because they're not completely connected yet, you know?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to get Bodhi on the agency too. I'll
Oh
catch up.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm like, get all the ocean people, take ocean people, Catherine. She's like,
Yeah, I had a friend reach out to me the other day that was like really randomly too. It was somebody that I met at our ocean conference in Panama, and she was like, "Hey, I'm like looking to further my communications career." And I was like, "Say no more." And so I like connected them, and I was like, "I know you already have like a long list of people that you're looking at, but like just also consider her."
also, when you're ready, is what I said.
Yeah,
When you're
yeah,
ready, that is available to you. Oh,
exactly.
that's awesome. No, yeah, I felt the same way after I felt the same way after the Harvard kind of endorsement or
Yeah,
opportunity. I
yeah,
just felt like, oh wow, because sometimes being here, I don't feel like it's I don't know many people who are doing the same thing here in Hawaii. And so when I leave and I go to a conference, I actually see that content creators are really valuable to the ocean
yeah.
industry and the fisheries industry. And I think that you're gonna come with that's gonna be such an important edge of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely already is. Like I find a lot of benefit in being a content or in being like a science communicator and seeing advisors' reactions to that and being like, oh, because I say this, like your research is useless if it cannot be communicated to people. Like your research is not useful if no one can understand it.
I'm like,
Um,
blogs aren't cutting it anymore. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like you are going to only get as much funding as people can like Google you for.
Mhm.
Like when it really comes down to it, the people that are giving us funding aren't necessarily scientists that are going to read all your papers. They're they're like people that have jobs and things to do and like they're making lots of money and they're figuring stuff out. They're going to Google you and
What
that's
show up? Yeah.
exactly. It's so funding comes where communication is as well. So it'll be important. And yeah, I'm excited for the next little bit. Definitely overwhelming really right now in the midst of applying for it all. This is like Chris and I were just saying at the beginning of all of this that this is like the most insane time of the year as far as like content creators go because you have to plan out your year and plan out your content and like we're planning for Ocean Month already. That's freaking June, man.
I know. I'm getting married during Earth Month, and I was like, am I just gonna take like a complete L on all potential income streams this year? And I'm like, maybe I can do both. And it's like, yeah, I gotta. It's like, but that's what you have to think about is like Ocean Month and like
Yeah,
the conferences and what you're gonna do,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
turn your life around it and juggle everything.
Oh yeah, I'm like applying for conferences, applying for scholarships, applying for grad schools, getting my content creation planned out, getting my like things in order. That's like what's happening right now. And I'm just like one thing off the list after the other, like check, 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 like trying to make sure I've like crossed all my I's, crossed
I
all my I's.
honestly
My
though,
God.
I like wouldn't have it any other way. Like I love doing a million
Oh
different things,
yeah.
not being in one silo of the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important.
What advice do you have for the youngins, the youngsters?
I my advice is that they're twofold. One, this is more for people that are like interested in marine science as a whole, as like a career, is don't overstress about like your undergrad. I tell people
Sweet
to
boy.
always, yeah, I tell people to get like a general biology degree or a general biochem or chemistry, whatever like science really interests you, get a general degree. Get a general degree and then do some internships and see where your passion is because you don't really know what you're gonna like until you're doing it. It I can tell you that once you're doing something, that'll tell you what you want to do. And so do a general biology degree, do 4 years of bio and do a bunch of internships. You can like have a concentration in marine science. You can do different things like that, but don't over stress about it. I feel like I stressed so hard about that decision when I was like set 16, 17, 18 about like what am I going to major in? Like if you want to get in the sciences, like just do a general science.
I always get a message that's like, I get messages that are like, should I major in marine science or conservation? And I'm like,
Yeah,
those are the same until you're at least 25. Like,
exactly.
I just, yeah, I did. I majored in a general bio, and I feel like that perspective has helped me so much too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it really does, and it gives you a well-rounded edge, and it allows you to apply for more things when it comes to graduate school, which is really what like when it comes like that's where you specialize when it comes to marine science typically is in graduate school. So if you have a well-rounded CV, if you have done a lot of biology, they're gonna like you're gonna have more options to do what you want to do as far as grad school. So yeah, don't stress too much about that. And then people that just want to work in like the ocean space in general, which I feel like is such a beautiful thing. I think that people not necessarily don't always want to be in science. They just want to do like conservation. They just want to be a part. I think that the best thing to do is to see like like what your I was gonna say weakness, but that's not the word I'm going for. What your strength is, geez Louise. Like what your strength is, like where you find that you enjoy doing things. Like, do you enjoy doing art? Do you enjoy doing, what is outreach? Do you enjoy going to schools? Do you enjoy going to the workshops and like doing beach cleanups and doing community and that kind of stuff, find your little niche and then work on that. Like just because we are always talking about marine biology, that does not mean that marine biology is the only thing in the marine sector. And I think that we need more people. We need more people in the ocean space.
Using all of the good stuff. But like I was so far away from I loved teaching like kids, like cakey, like
Yeah.
youngsters. And I
Yeah.
just went back to doing it 6 months ago and I feel like so much more fulfilled. And even though it's not like what I'm going to specialize in, like knowing that that's what I love helps
Yeah.
kind of like refill my cup when I'm feeling burnt out or, consume too much news for the day.
Absolutely. I also enjoy teaching kids and like I do it as a volunteer thing now. I just like
Oh,
do
awesome.
like and it like brings me so much joy. And like even if it's just that, like even if you're like my career is actually going to be in like A B C D E and like that's what I'm passionate about doing for my career, but I still love the ocean and I want to like participate. Like if you find a small thing to do, if you like enjoy teaching kids about whales or enjoy doing any of these things on your volunteer, like that's great. Like that's perfect too. Like we just need so many people in this space. Any way that you can contribute is meaningful and impactful and wonderful in my eyes. And you don't need to worry about it. Don't stress about it.
Don't stress about it. That's another thing though that I've learned that is a specific marine science thing. Like my mom's like about to retire and she's like, when I retire, I want to volunteer. Like she hasn't like volunteered in her life. I feel like we have just been volunteering from the beginning
Yeah.
when you have like the time and privilege to do so. But I feel like it's something I'm going to do my whole life. Like if I'm like making money in this other way, I'm going to go fulfill my stuff through service-based either learning
Yeah.
or teaching. And you can just volunteer, like you said, like to just fill your gap in what you're
Yeah.
missing in your career. And
Yeah.
I wish that all industries kind of celebrated that, but I think it's a marine science thing too.
I can see that for sure. I wish that there was more. I feel like we also like it's hard because I couldn't imagine being like a teacher and then like also
Oh,
volunteering like
volunteering. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's a lot of work and I like completely respect that if like a teacher just wants to like go home and like that's also fair.
Mhm. Totally fair. Shouldn't be
Yeah.
outworked by the education system.
Exactly. So it's like it's all about perspective, I guess. But yeah, if wherever you can contribute that like also makes you feel good at the end of the day too, right? When you give back and then the world gives back to you, feels a
Yeah.
little bit good. Yeah.
Um, we finish every episode with the same question.
Okay.
It's if you could put a message on a billboard for all the most powerful people in the world to see and read, what would your billboard say? And these are we're talking like the politicians, the Koch brothers, all of these people. They're gonna read it. What's it gonna
I feel
say?
like mine would not be PG-13. Mine would be mean. Mine would just
Like a
be,
soft.
yeah, mine would be like a mine would be mean. Like I think I would have to like
Which
take up
will
the
be
whole thing,
televised.
like a little like yeah, this it would be like a paragraph of me just like being the meanest I could possibly be, and I can definitely be pretty mean. Like it
You're like,
would,
I have some resentment to this
yeah,
demographic.
yeah. I'd be like, dear most powerful people, I
Thanks
hope
for
this, yeah, I hope this message finds you doing fucking awful.
this. Great. That's amazing. That's gonna be yours. That's gonna be yours. Dear most powerful people, I hope this message finds you fucking awful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're the best. Thanks for coming on Sustainability in the Sea.
Thank you for having me.